Hi there, and welcome to Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. I'm your host and founder of Speaking Your Brand, Carol Cox. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to create and deliver a keynote that inspires audiences, transforms audiences, but also builds your speaking career. I'm excited to have joining me here today 3 women who attended our recent Speaking Accelerator in-person workshop in Orlando, Florida. We have Kait Richardson, who lives here in Orlando, where I live. She's a registered dietitian. We have Alfie McGinty, who lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, and she is a coroner, which is not an industry or not a profession that I usually come across. So we'll definitely talk about that. And then Niki Ramirez, who is a leader to help HR departments and other HR leaders in their profession. And she lives in the Phoenix, Arizona area. As I mentioned, they recently attended our one-day speaking workshop. We had a lot of fun, and they walked away with the foundation for keynotes that they're going to deliver. Now, they are already established and experienced speakers in their industries, especially when it comes to talking about more professional or business related topics, but they wanted to challenge themselves and think about how can they take the work that they do, what matters to them, but then turn it into more of a story-driven, transformational message as we think about for a keynote address. So we're going to talk about all of that here today. Before I invite them to introduce themselves, I want to let you all know that our next one-day in-person speaking workshop is coming up in Orlando on February 19th, 2026. You can get all of those details and register at speakingyourbrand.com/Orlando. All right, Kait, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about a little bit about what you do. You recently also delivered a TEDx talk, which was so well done. Why did you decide that you wanted to work on a keynote?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Your workshop was so much fun. I've been telling so many of the people I know who do workshops and speaking engagements to check it out. And the reason I wanted to do it is because about 6 months ago, I had heard some podcast, I can't remember exactly what it was, that reframed all of the things that we do in our businesses as either you're an amateur or you can be a pro. And I had done about, I don't know, 25 speaking engagements, workshops, and I knew in my heart I love doing it. I love speaking in front of audiences. I've loved that ever since I was a kid. I love being on stage. I love helping people, inspiring people. But I felt like I was an amateur. I was just kind of picking up things here and there. I knew what to talk about. I had an idea of how to deliver specific information, how to get audiences engaged, but I wasn't a pro yet. And so doing the TEDx talk and doing your workshop, I feel like is helping me become a pro, right? Getting in there and really mastering how to speak to audiences about women's health and nutrition.
Okay, well, I really like this distinction between an amateur and a pro and really investing in that skill building and all the things that I think a lot of us who enjoy speaking, we've been doing it for a long time. We probably did it in high school and maybe in debate team or acting, or we did some. So we kind of learned these things just along the way. And so we're good at it. But in order to be great, I think to your point, Kait, you have to invest in the things that you don't know when it comes to this.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Alfie, let's go to you. So as I mentioned at the top, so you're actually a coroner. So can you tell us, well, how did you get into that profession? And then tell us a little bit about why you decided to come to the workshop and work on a keynote.
Yeah, so I've been with the coroner's office and a death investigator for 28 years. And I got into that sort of unexpectedly. While in undergrad, I went to an office to work part-time and do an internship. And by day 2, I loved the work. I loved the job. I loved everything about it. And what I found is there's a lot of education in death investigation. So you are talking a lot about explaining how the death occurred and those kind of things. And so I kind of morphed into sort of this educator in my speaking and talking and teaching about death investigation. And I wanted to expand, and I thought the workshop would be a great opportunity for me to expand a talk, right? Like expand upon all the things that I know about death investigation, but also in life in general. And so I wanted to do this workshop, and oh my goodness, I thought I'm a teacher, right? So I thought, oh, I'm going to go, I'm going to sit down in front of the class and learn a bunch of things while sitting. Oh no, it is so interactive, and it had us up and moving and hanging out with each other and talking and laughing uncontrollably in some instances. So it was great fun. And I walked away ready to have like 4 talks, right? 4 keynotes. So that was the exciting thing about the class that we did.
Okay, well, good. Yes, we definitely get you moving around, right? Who wants to sit all day? We sit all day on Zoom, right? As it is. Like, if we're going to be in person, we're going to be moving around. So we're going to come back to this idea of teaching and educational content and how that is different from what you all worked on with your keynotes. Let me say hi to Diane, Monica, and Aaron, who are here with us live as we're going. So thank you so much for being here and letting us know in the comments. Niki, let me bring you in. So tell us a little bit about what you do and why because you have been doing speaking a long time. You speak a lot. So why did you decide you wanted to work on a keynote?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us today. It's nice to see Alfie and Kate too. We did have such a good time, and Alfie was my table partner, and we did laugh a lot. So yeah, I have been in the speaking world since the 90s. So it's been a really nice sort of long journey. And to Kate's good point, like I know there's always more to improve. And Carol, you and I met years ago now in another circle for women entrepreneurs who are ambitious and trying to grow their skill set and their businesses. And I've really enjoyed working with you and Diane. So when the opportunity came up to attend in person, build my skills and expand the type of speaking, so really going into it with the lens of developing this keynote, it was just a slam dunk idea. And I'm thinking about and moving forward with the idea of keynoting because I think there is space to do a little bit more inspiring people to figure out what their own next steps are. I think a lot of times when we see a keynote, that's what, that's the hope. And that's what I love about them. Just kind of like, okay, well, what could I do next? And I think, I spent years working with HR professionals, small business leaders, developing their HR and leadership practices. And now I'd love to just be able to encourage other people to, whatever the thing is they're working on, it doesn't have to be HR or leadership, just be inspired to work on it, no matter what challenges they're facing. So just needed to be there in the room with you all to get that underway.
Yeah, well, I love it. And so then what we do in the morning during the workshop is that we teach you our framework here and we give you the materials. And so this looks familiar to you all because this is what you did. You had the boards that we gave you, and then you had your Post-it notes, and we kind of prompted you and guided you and asked you questions that you then wrote down on the Post-it notes and filled in along the way. And I remember that as you all were working on them, Diane and I would go around and chat with you and kind of see what you were working on and how we could help. And Kate, I'll come back to you because, like I said, you've been doing speaking workshops, at least a couple of dozen of them. And they were probably pretty information rich, where you're teaching the audience certain things for them to understand about their health and what you have learned as a dietitian in your own journey. So how did thinking about this, though, from a keynote perspective, shift your idea of what kind of content and how to frame your message?
Oh, okay. That's a really great question. So how to frame my message, that's the first struggle that I had before the workshop because I have so many messages. I have so many things that I talked about on a day-to-day basis just in my work as a dietitian. Just for context, I sit face-to-face with people at a desk and they share with me their biggest struggles, their stories, their backgrounds when it comes to what they've had trouble with health and body image. And so there's so many things just floating around in my brain. And I'm like, what actually do I want to speak about? And I can't remember the exact question that you just asked me, but I think what really helped me, I have my board here actually.
Oh yeah, there you
show
go.
off, was just getting to the main points that I wanted to share and then learning how to interweave the storytelling, the education in all of that. Because when I've spoken at medical conferences, the expectation is that you're going to, meet certain continuing education criteria. You're going to show a bunch of research. You're going to back everything up with science. I'm talking to physicians, I'm talking to other dietitians, and they expect to see you prove your points. When you're talking and doing a keynote, that's not the point. The point is to share a message, share a story get the audience leaving and feeling and wanting to make some kind of change or improvement or take some information and apply it to their own life. It's not proving every single point that you say with research and science. So this really helped me get to my key point and interweave how to really connect with the audience, how to make stories and how to make the messages actually stick instead of just putting everyone to sleep with facts and science and data.
Right. Yeah, like using the facts and the data to support the point that you want to make versus the other way around. I think a lot of times we lead with like, okay, here's the data, the science, but like, okay, but then how does that fit to the audience and what's important to them? And I remember that when in your act 2, so the middle part, we talked a little bit about stages. So in keynotes, it's helpful to either share with the audience 3 lessons that you want to impart, or like 3 pillars or principles that you've learned, or 3 stages. So people go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 in their journey, as they learn more, as they develop more awareness. So Kait, I think you ended up with 3 stages that in your talk. Do you want to share a little bit about those with us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So just for context, I'm speaking in my keynote to women in leadership, women-led businesses, and women's retreats. So usually women who are giving a lot, doing a lot, either to their business, to their family, to their community. And what I've seen in my work is these women are doing such amazing things, but they often put themselves last.
Mhm.
And as a result, when they're not putting themselves first when it comes to their health, their nutrition, their rest, their fun, because that's part of wellness too, is that they begin to feel resentful, they get burnt out, they may experience unwanted health consequences, breakouts, unwanted weight gain, all of the things that you could think about that could go wrong start to happen when women put themselves last. So my framework shows how if we start from a place of being self-sacrificing, that can really drain us. And what we actually have to do is step in to being radically selfish with our health, choosing ourselves, saying no to things if it's going to impede into our health rituals. And then you can actually go into a place of self-leadership because you're taking care of yourself, and now you can give and serve your community from a place of power and wellness and not resentment and not bitterness and burnout.
Yeah, I love that. It's so inspiring and impactful, but it's also very tangible. And I think the audience will see themselves in those stages and recognize, okay, where am I at and where do I want to get to? Yeah. Okay. Well done. All right, Alfie. So let's come to you. So I know that you have a very personal story that you decided that you wanted to anchor your keynote in to share with the audience. So whatever you feel comfortable with, do you want to share a little bit about that, and then how you decided to frame up the core message or the core lessons that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so 4 years ago, I lost my son, my firstborn son, Jimmy, to a fentanyl poisoning. And what I found was that grief was hard, although I had dealt with grief with other families in this industry of death investigation for many years. 20 plus years. And then here it was, now I'm facing grief and I'm having to deal with grief. And I just didn't know how to do it. I couldn't get through how to just get up every day and keep going. But yet, I wanted to talk about it. And as we know, substance abuse and substance use is a very stigmatized subject, and just encouraging people to be able to talk about it. So with what I learned during the course with you all was that that there were pillars, right? That there were stages of things to talk about when it comes to the keynote. And what was encouraging for me was giving people inspiration to identify what some of those things are as it pertains to grief. So my 3 pillars were: notice it, name it, and nurture it. And that's something that I had never thought of before. So I came into this like, okay, so I'm going to have this keynote. And, I didn't think anything about those 3 pillars and those stages until I got there. And it was so encouraging. Now I use it so much. It's like, okay, this is good. But that was what I took away from that, and how to put that into the talk and put that into the keynote, where now it's easy for people to remember. In fact, I said it and now people are repeating it. And so
Yes.
that was encouraging. And that was just the one thing, like the big takeaway for me for my own grief as I was going through it. And now I have something to work with other people on as it pertains to navigating grief for others and with others.
Oh, Alfie, well, thank you for sharing that. And the notice it, name it, nurture it. Right? You got the alliteration in there as well. So yes, it makes it
Yeah.
memorable for you, right? So you
Yeah.
can remember it if you're doing a podcast interview or a speaking engagement, or if you're on a panel or anything else, you just kind of clicks into place and you know what's important to share. Then obviously your audience can remember it more easily as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Niki, let's come to you. So tell us a little bit about your core message in your keynote, what you decided for Act 2, and then we'll come back to how you decided to open with a personal story. But let's focus on Act 2 and what you put there.
Yeah, so thankfully, I just got to meet with Diane also, and so I don't necessarily have my 3 pillars dialed in like exactly yet. I'm still working on it, but you know the keynote that I am putting together and then molding into this fantastic framework is about reframing and shifting our concept of being perhaps unlucky sometimes. And so we're talking about how we can cultivate and manufacture luck in our lives through simple actions and attitudes. And so, yeah, so I'm on Alfie's tail here with, trying to find some good alliteration and dial in. I always have too much to Kate's too many things to think about, I have too many pillars, little Carol. So working on it.
I know.
But it's so important though to really follow the framework. And I really believe in it. And I'm so grateful that we were there to just dial it in, because as a consumer of keynotes, and I love a good inspirational talk. Always, I always will. The best ones have really clear and concise messaging. And so I'm working hard to figure out what my hook is a little bit, but the concept is really about, thinking about how to create luck and cultivate luck in our lives. And it's a mental exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, something for you to think about, Niki, and this goes to anyone listening as well, is that, so we talk about in that Act 2, that core, it could be three lessons, like those hard won life lessons. It could be 3 stages people go through. It could be three pillars. Like pillars are good if stages or lessons don't make sense. Another way to do it, came to mind for you, Niki, is like 3 myths or 3 beliefs we have about luck. So like contrasting like the 3 myths or beliefs versus what actually it is. And that could be a good way to like bucket your key points in Act 2.
Love it. Thank you, Carol.
Yes. And trust me, I get it. We all have too much content. I have a gazillion slide decks and presentations. And I just know, okay, but for the 30 minutes or 45 minutes I have for this audience, what can I give them? And then I'll give a different talk to a different audience, and I'll get to use all the other stuff that I have.
Exactly. Yeah. And with the storytelling piece of it, that's the other reason I came to the event. I've always struggled to figure out how to incorporate a good story into the keynote content. And that was one of my sticking points. I needed to get momentum. So when we think about pulling a story through it or using a story to inspire a way of thinking, I mean, that was definitely another reason that I chose to go. So I could have your help right there on the spot, you and Diane, to really say, okay, this is where stories go, and this is how to link it to your message.
Yeah, that was fun. All right. So in the mornings, you all worked on your boards, and then we had an hour lunch, which was nice. We could kind of just like take a brain break and chat and eat. And then in the afternoon, we got to do some fun exercises. And then each of you took the stage for about 5 minutes to practice delivering either a story or a segment of the talk that you had worked on. And so when you got to the stage to do your practice session, you had no slides, no notes, no script, no outline, nothing. So honestly, were you terrified? How did you feel? And then how do you think it went? Kait, I'll come back to you.
Well, I was definitely terrified because, what I talk about as a dietitian, what resonates with people are the stories. And especially when you can be really honest about the things that Well, I'll give you an example. So growing up my whole life, I was mostly insecure about my body, trying to be thin, trying to fit in, trying to be popular, trying to be liked. Like that was just the narrative of my adolescence and young adulthood. So then stepping up in front of a bunch of professional women with your blazers on, and everyone looks really nice, and sharing with everyone about how growing up I was so insecure is very nerve-wracking. But I felt when I was sharing that part and I tied it into this real story I had about a client who was in her 70s and she came to me just hating her body and wanting to lose 5 more pounds. And how that was an eye opener for me because I was like, I don't want to be 70 worried about losing 5 more pounds. I mean, I'm 31 and that's exhausting. And so I don't want to go the next 40 years of my life doing that. And so when I shared that story, I could tell that women who were at the workshop could resonate with that because being a woman in a body in present time is hard. There's a lot of pressure and it's hard not to have negative feelings about yourself. So it gave me a lot of confidence to continue sharing that because it's received well, even though it's really scary. And one of the reasons it's really scary, I felt this way at my TEDx talk as well, is because when you're talking about insecurities with your own body, everyone's looking at you. And
Right.
so they're going to be looking at your body and people are going to have thoughts about your body. That's just what happens sometimes when you're talking about it, you know? And so getting over that takes a lot of repetitions. And I'll never be 100% over it, but I'd love to be 99% over it. And so the repetitions are what I need.
That's an excellent point, right? Because if we're talking about something that's vulnerable, but it's not something that is right there for people to look at, that is, yeah, I can see how that's like an extra layer of vulnerability that you have for sure. But I think that then you are role modeling to your audience that you are here anyways. And actually, you could even say that out loud to the audience. Like, I know it's either, it's ironic or there's an extra layer of vulnerability that I'm standing here talking about my body, you're all looking at my body, but this is what we need to get more comfortable doing.
Yeah, because then you
Yeah.
make everyone in the audience feel more comfortable, and then you could have more connection with the audience off stage, which I think is also really important for women who have businesses or who have things that they're doing because you want to connect with the audience and build those relationships. And that starts with trust. And so, especially when I'm talking about health and body image, I want to be a person that people can talk to about their biggest fears and involves putting mine all on the table.
Yes. Yeah. The excellent point about building trust through sharing those personal stories and the vulnerable moments as well. Niki, let me come back to you. So I know that in the keynote that you were working on, that you had a personal story that you were going to open with this, and a story that you don't share normally in the speaking engagements that you do, right? So how did it feel to work on that? And then how did it feel to get up on the stage and practice sharing that?
Yeah, well, it was definitely a challenge for, having been on so many stages. This stage felt like it was bigger and more important than any stage I'd ever been on. And it was only this far off the ground and how many 30 women in the room, right? So no, I mean, the story that I am sharing is the story that shaped the way that I think about luck. And so in the late-ish 90s, I was carjacked at gunpoint while on campus at my college. And, a lot of years later and a lot of retrospect later, I've been able to pick it apart and figure out how that particular incident actually spurred my interest in continuing to be out in the world and connect with people and really see people for what was happening in their moment. Because, I think that, as we navigate the world, so many times we're just passing by one another and, taking that opportunity to say, gosh, I'm so lucky that I learned how to interpret someone's feelings of crisis. How I was able to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to slow down in this moment, but I'm not out of this game. I'm coming back to school. It was nerve wracking to pull this very personal story that, I had no reason to tell it on any other stage. It just didn't fit into the concepts that I talk about in most cases. So yeah, it was really great to be up there. And yes, it was nerve wracking and it was very doable. And it was such a safe and comfortable space to grow. And it took me days to go back and watch my video. Alfie and Kait, I don't know how soon you went and watched your video, but I waited over a week to go back and watch it.
I feel like that's normal. I don't like watching my videos either.
I waited for a week and then I said, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Right? Yeah, that's what always happens, right? Like we make it up in our head about what it is.
Right. So much room to grow, but it was not bad at all. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah,
Carol.
you all did great. Again, like feeling not put on the spot. Like you knew what was coming, but still, again, like with not, because we want you to get comfortable with this idea that you know your content, you know your stories, and being overly prepared actually disconnects you from your audience rather than improving the rapport that you're trying to build with them. So Alfie, I'll come to you now to talk to us a little bit about what was it like in the afternoon. So again, up on the practice stage, sharing part of your talk, but then even some of the other kind of activities that we did to kind of help you all get more into your bodies and into your stage presence.
Yeah, so you just hit the nail on the head when you said overly preparing. As a death investigator, I always have notes and I always am prepared with something to back up what I'm saying. And you had to go on that stage with nothing. And I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I have notes. I need notes. I need a presentation. I need something. And to go up there and just know the story and be able to tell the story, not only that, but also in a given amount of time. So to stay on the time task, right? And making sure that you're staying in focus and you're wrapping it up within a certain amount of time. And then in addition to that, the other takeaway, which Niki, I immediately watched probably while I was walking back to the hotel room. Because I'm all about like practicing and making it better and doing better. And what I noticed and what I loved about that opportunity to be on that stage was you all gave immediate feedback. And that presence of being on the stage, how you move on the stage stuck with me so much so I still practice that, right?
Oh,
Like,
good.
as you mentioned, like moving in a certain way, not crossing your legs as you walk across the stage. That was like the fun part. So I still practice that because you may or may not have a podium in front of you. You may or may not have notes or a presentation. So those were the takeaways that I got from that. But the other parts of, some of the impromptu things were quite funny, like, just trying to describe and mimic what people were doing, right? And I don't know what that exercise was called, but that part of the workshop was hilarious. But it also taught us how to be impromptu, right? How to think quickly on our feet. So that's what we had to do in those minutes while we were on that stage. So those parts of the workshop were where you got to get up and move and talk and just do something different than you would ordinarily not do in a classroom. So that was the exciting part.
Oh, well, good. Well, good for you for watching your video right away. Wow. Like I'm usually like this, like I'm looking through my fingers to watch a video. Like I don't know. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, yeah, that was a lot of fun. All right. So I would love to hear from each of you now. What is next for you? What are you working on for 2026? What visions do you have for speaking engagements that you want to do or stages that you want to be on? Kait?
Pitching, pitching, pitching.
Yep.
Yeah, no, now that I have so much more clarity on the keynotes, and I also do nutrition workshops, so workshops for small businesses. So now that I have a lot of clarity on the keynote, I'm going through and finding all different types of conferences, medium, large businesses, and I am just working with a coach to master my pitch game. And I do have a few speaking engagements lined up. I'm doing one for the Florida Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Actually, you'll appreciate it. It's about using your story to empower your brand. And you just released an episode about policy. And that's what dietitians in Florida right now are really trying to push, which is being an activist, helping our profession really rise up. And so that's why they're having me come in to talk to help give dietitians the courage to share their story with policymakers. So excited to listen to your episode and glean some things from that. And then I'm doing some in-person workshops with local physicians in the area about menopause and metabolism. So a lot of fun things coming up in January. And in between, I'll just be pitching.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, I can't wait to get updates and hear about all the places that you're going to be. And yes, for those of you listening, so definitely check out just the previous episode about how you can use your voice and your expertise to shape policy. That's with my guest, Dr. Deborah Stein. And so actually she was here in the LinkedIn Live chiming in the comments here. So she's actually joining our Thought Leader Academy online program that starts in January to help her develop her keynotes as well. All right, Alfie, let's come to you. What is on deck for you for 2026?
Well, so my number one goal is to be like Kate and do a TED Talk. So all things and all roads are leading to a TED Talk. That is the number one goal. And then later, pitching for new opportunities to speak, to do a keynote, for larger audiences and audiences outside of death investigation. So they're used to hearing and seeing me, but I want to go outside of that particular profession and maybe see where else, what I have to say can lead other people and how inspirational it might be for others. But that number one thing in 2026 is that TED Talk.
Ooh, okay, fantastic. All right, I love it. Niki, what about you?
All right, Alfie, cheering you along. It's going to happen. You said it. Oh, very good. So 2026, we're hustling at hranswers.org, just doing tons of HR consulting. And so I'm taking the opportunity to introduce some of the concepts from this developing keynote to our clients as well. So that's fun. They get to be my trusted collaborators and test audience a lot of the time. And beyond that, I'm really looking forward to being able to get on stage with HR organizations and other spaces where leaders are gathered so that we can all talk about cultivating luck in a time of, difficulty and confusion in the world. I think we've all got our own challenges, regardless of where we are in our life stage or socioeconomic position or all of the things that are very personal to us that make our life challenging. And so I think it's just time for us to get together and talk about how to cultivate luck. And so, like I said, looking forward to starting with people who already have a voice. So leaders and organizations, let's use our voice to lift people up. That's where you'll find me.
Oh, I love that you're bringing this idea of luck back into your HR content.
Yes. Yeah. HR as a profession feels on average very unlucky because we do deal with the problems within organizations. And if we have time, then we get to do strategy and fun stuff. But most of our time really is spent dealing with issues. And so we could use a boost of luck across the industry.
Yes. All right. Fantastic. Well, I'm wishing you all well and cheering you on for sure. Make sure to connect with Kait, Alfie, and Niki on their LinkedIn profiles. The links are in the show notes, so you can find them there. And if you would like to come to our next one-day in-person Speaking Accelerator Workshop, so you can work on your signature talk. It could be for a keynote. It could be for lead generation, so a business presentation. It could be the start of your TEDx talk. Really, it could even be all three because there's ways to mix and match and repurpose the one talk into these different formats, and also have a lot of fun practicing on stage and getting to know an incredible room full of women. You can get all of those details and register at speakingyourbrand.com/Orlando. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/Orlando, and that is coming up February 19th. 2026. All right. Thank you so much, the three of you, for being at the workshop, for supporting each other, and for coming on and sharing your experiences here on Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. Until next time, thanks for listening.